Welcome back to Straight Talk with Billy Kay. I'm Billy Keyserling, the guy who's fortunate to be the mayor of Beaufort. The purpose of the show and my emails and newsletters, and now Straight Talk, which is online, is to try to help the people of Beaufort have a better understanding of what's going on in and around town, and to expose ideas for them to talk about and to get back to me on. Given it's an election year, and given I'm decided to run for re-election for mayor, I thought maybe I shouldn't host the show. So I called on an old friend, a neighbor, Lolita Huckaby, who many of you will recognize. Lolita's the senior, the veteran newspaper and television reporter in Beaufort. Lolita worked for WHHI-TV. She worked in a number of different capacities for the Beaufort Gazette. She was the editor of the Bluffton News. She worked for Beaufort Today. Beaufort Today. She worked for the Bluffton News. Lolita probably knows more news that's happening around town, and has her ear to the ground, spending most of her time now volunteering for social service agencies, which is rather admirable. Anyway, instead of filibustering, taking all the time, I'm going to turn the show over to Lolita, and Lolita's just going to ask me questions about the city, about my campaign, about what's going on, whatever she wants.
Anything. Okay. Well, this is kind of...
Rather than, can I borrow a cup of sugar?
Exactly. Or if you've got any beer in your refrigerator, we're out. But no, I have been in Beaufort for 34 years, and in fact, when I moved here, you weren't here. You had gone away, but I heard about you. And I knew Billy's mother, Harriet, very well, and as a political reporter, I worked with her and got to know her and where she stood politically. And then Billy came back in on the scene, and I was a political reporter for the Gazette and then the Beaufort Bureau of the Savannah Morning News for a number of years, and covered Beaufort city government before Billy was even on the city council, which I know at times it must feel like you've been there forever.
Well, the past 4 years have been forever, but yeah. Other than that, I'm going to go for another forever.
Well, that's good. I mean, I'm glad you're going to run. I know at this point you don't have any opposition, and nor do the two council seats that are open. The incumbents have filed, and no one's run yet. I think the deadline's the 15th.
The deadline's the 15th. This show may get on before then, it may not. But but you know, whether you got a candidate or not, if you want to run for re-election, you've got to go out there and be with the people.
You have to. I know.
So
and I know you know that.
Even if I don't have an opponent, and while it can be a burden to have an opponent, and it can cost money and lots of anxiety, a campaign's a good thing. So if you don't have an opponent, my theory is you run against yourself. How can I do better this next 4 years? And the way to do that is to check in with the people. So I think either way, I'll knock on doors. I'll have coffee parties in people's homes. Hopefully I won't have to spend as much money.
Right, well, I understand that, but as a reporter, it's not
very newsy.
Yeah, it's not a lot to write about there. But the thing is, if people don't run, I don't think there's not a competition in it. We're in a democracy. We need to have competition, and it helps you think. And as you said, reach out and learn more about what the people are thinking.
Well, I think in the big picture, there's a failure with our democratic, with a little d, our participatory system. It's that so few people, that money has taken over to have such an impact, and that people have been discounted by money. And maybe this is the way to get an opponent, but I'm not so sure that some of the big city machines weren't more participatory with more accountability, where you had ward chairmen and precinct captains, and there was a line of command, a chain of command. It's really, you know, everybody says in Great Britain they don't have the long elections like we do, but they have an ongoing election to the parliamentary system, because the parliamentary system is really nothing but a political party that actually works year-round to do it. So, but I think it's a travesty that more people don't run for political office. I think it's an even greater travesty that people aren't registered, and many of those who are registered don't vote. So, you know, I have mixed emotions.
Well, that's talking about having, well, anybody who's listening to their friends talk at all about politics, there's a general feeling of just discontent and a feeling of helplessness, and it starts at the national level and boils down, and so maybe that's why people aren't running. I've heard politicians jokingly say, or maybe not so laughingly say, you know, people must like the way we're doing things. But I know you hear a lot from people who aren't happy about issues, who are mad at you and feel like, you know, you aren't doing what they want you to do.
When you send out 3,500 emails in a blast a month, and you get 150, 200 back, you know people are not, well, the nice thing about being exposed is a lot of people, surprising number of people say, we like what you're doing. But it creates the vehicle for those who don't. And you know, Lolita, sometimes it's very difficult. You know, I, by choice and by the economy and deciding to back off of real estate, have really been a full-time mayor. So I have a lot of time with people. But I am, and therefore I go to lots of meetings, and I really do know a great deal of what's happening. And I'm so surprised and disappointed that things that city council, decisions that were made, that went through a public vetting process, that they voted on in a referendum, when 4 years later there's the money in place, the plans in place, I'm talking about Boundary Street, they act as if it's a new idea, and that people have been holding it back from them. So that when people do disconnect, it makes it that much harder for us, the elected officials, because we're generally on it day to day, because we have to make the decisions. And I don't know how it's all about communication. I tell young people that as the mayor, my job is to be a bridge between yesterday and tomorrow. And as the mayor, I'm supposed to lead a civil conversation about how the world we leave to them can be better. And that's what I try to do. But, you know, people don't have the time the newspaper doesn't give the kind of coverage we were accustomed to when we had a unique to Beaufort newspaper. And so it's more difficult for people to know what's happening. And I'd say that if you ask me what my biggest frustration is, it's that there's more news about what's happening in Beaufort on the editorial page, where the editors are criticizing us, than there is on the front page about the things that are actually being done. They've taken a very active role, and sometimes they support us, most times they don't. But that's besides the point.
Well, how do you feel, talking about news coverage, how do you feel about the juxtaposition of news that we hear so much about what Hilton Head's doing? And true, we're all one county, but it seems like we hear more about what Hilton Head is doing than even what the county's doing as a whole.
Well, we do, because you were on the white hat side of the news business, where you went out and gathered news.
Right.
There's the gray hat side, or the green hat side of the news business, where they have to make money.
Exactly.
And where do they sell ads? In Hilton Head. Where are there more businesses on Hilton Head? When they combine the newspapers and they double the cost of ads for small Beaufort companies, they couldn't compete. So you're selling to your advertisers, and so it's going to be skewed that way, and that's just the harsh reality. I mean, the Ladies Island News, which is a different kind of a newspaper, has its audience around its advertising as well, but that's typically younger families who look for what there is to do in the neighborhood and the community, rather than the hard news. So the most difficult part is that we're stuck. Again, it comes down to money.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think the method of gathering and distributing news is changed so much. But I mean, you have your Facebook. The city has a good website. It's being updated. So there is information out there. Of course, a lot of people will say, well, you know, there's so many people who aren't on the internet, you know, don't have computers, and that's true. But I think those numbers are changing, you know.
Radically.
Yeah, all the time.
Radically. I think the new way of communicating is you know, I don't do Twitter.
Thank you. Thank you for not doing
just
Twitter.
A little bit. I don't want to impose myself every minute, but I put stuff on Facebook and I put stuff on the website.
Well, what about government participation? Well, how has that changed in the years that you've been in elected office? That actually people coming to meetings or getting involved? Because I know the city's set up this elaborate schedule of public sessions talking about the plan and just civic involvement in general?
Generally speaking, well, there are two levels of civic engagement. One is the neighborhoods are more active than they've ever been, and the city's encouraged that. We have what we call the Neighborhood Improvement Committee, and each of the neighborhood sends at least one, but could send as many as they want, representatives to a meeting with city staff to talk about cleanliness, safety, police safety, fire safety, inspections, unique problems in the neighborhoods, and they share. And as I say, you know, all the city's department heads are there, and all the neighborhoods, they come almost like ambassadors. They help us. We've had massive neighborhood cleanups where volunteers. So that part of civic engagement is there. Coming to a meeting, unless, you know, the best way to get somebody to come to a meeting is to send out a news release that if they don't come to the meeting, the whole neighborhood's going to be painted pink. We've got to stop for a break right now, but we'll be right back. Welcome back to Straight Talk with Billy Kay. If you're just joining us, I'm on with Lolita Huckaby, who is Beaufort's most senior veteran. I guess we call her retired as a reporter, but she still knows everybody's business. And given I just announced for re-election, I thought we'd flip-flop it and let her be the reporter and let me be the guest on the show. So, Lolita, tell me where we were.
We were talking about civic involvement and how citizens do get information now. But just changing course on the conversation a little bit, one thing I've been doing a lot since I retired was working with service agencies who are trying to deliver services to people who are not as fortunate in this community. And what do you see that for those people in the city government? I mean, those aren't the people who are going to come to a meeting and ask for things, but we know they're there. We know they have real needs. They have housing issues, and I think the city's making some progress in that area.
We're making some progress on fixing up houses, but we're not dealing with the fundamental problems. You know, there's always, we don't get many people. I get people just because
you're out and about.
I'm out and about.
Exactly.
Who come and say, what are we going to do about the homeless people? But I don't think we've ever had anyone in 4 years come to council and say, what are we going to do about the homeless? The faith-based community, the organizations you're involved in, the coalition, the
Human Services Alliance.
Human Services Alliance, to which I went to your meeting, are working on these problems, but generally the place to go is the state, but the state doesn't have the resources that they used to have, so people are falling through the cracks. I'm seeing and hearing much more church-based activity in terms of either running thrift shops to earn money to help people in need, or by running closets with food, clothing, furniture for the needy. But the fundamental question is, you know, is the controversial one, and it's been controversial since before you came to Beaufort, which is before I came back, and that is, when will we really make a commitment to creating a more diverse economic base so that we're not so dependent upon tourism, government, and that we have better jobs so that the young people who grow up here and the people who come here can have better paying jobs so they can live better. Not only does it help them, it creates a culture in the schools that where kids begin to go to school with people who see that their friends' parents and their friends are living better as a result than they were. And it gives that middle schooler who's typically getting angry at the system because he or she knows that she's not going to live any better, and she's following in the footsteps of something that is uncomfortable. But if we can create that role model through that, and that's why we took what some will say a gutsy move, and I think it was a good business decision to buy the Beaufort
building.
Commerce Park. We're working prospects, but it's a very slow and trying process. It's and one of the most difficult parts of it is in this time of transparency. It's not, you can't talk about other people's business in public.
Yeah.
If a business wants to relocate, you can't tell people that because they don't want their employees to know, or they don't want their competition to know. So in a skeptical world, people could think that we're doing nothing, or that we're doing things behind closed doors, or we're the cynical, we're cutting deals with our friends, or you can let your imagination go to work on that. But the only way we're going to get to the fundamental question of the quality of life for the people who live here is to basically have the courage to recruit and create jobs so that those who live here can grow up better. In the city of Beaufort, very few people realize 12,000 people, moderate to low income, 47% renters. Yet, look what's around us, and as we grew suburban, that's where the money, and it's not money that was made here. The money that comes to Beaufort County, particularly the southern part, is imported money. So it's good to have it. It's good to have those people spending it.
Yeah.
But it's not money that's making money, because making money creates better jobs. And so we'd like to see that more involved. And so we've with the other mayors who are supporting us, we're going to go out and get more involved in economic development, because that's the only place to turn in the long run. We can do Band-Aids, and thank goodness for the groups like yours that are working as hard as they can. I mean,
I think you're right. I think because the tax dollars aren't there anymore. They're just not there. So we have to look for other solutions to those problems, to getting people involved and getting them off the streets. I know that the city has launched this program about the housing task force and the housing loan program.
right.
So that seems to have a lot of promise. I know it's just getting started, so we can't tell
but
yet.
no, and we're actually investing by using some surplus city land to try to get the prices down, to build a model neighborhood project to show that you can mix up the kinds of people in a neighborhood, and rather than continue the mode. Beaufort County has been pretty good about not having housing projects per se. It's been staggered. But this is even more so. You know, you can go to Washington Street and see a Habitat house across the street from a market rate house.
I know, it's incredible.
And people know each other and live together and peacefully, and you wouldn't know the difference. And that's what that project's about, is trying to mix it up a bit.
Any idea how many jobs have been added, or how many new businesses have come in since you took office? What was that, 4 years ago? Well, plus you were on the council before that. Because you think about all the development on Boundary Street, and there are new businesses there. True, some of them open up and then they close, unfortunately. But there's are new jobs.
Yeah, I can't tell you the answer, but I would guess that there are only so many people who are going to eat in a restaurant, and a lot of it's food and beverage. And that when a new one comes, it's not long before one that
closes.
didn't compete closes. So the net number of jobs is probably not a significant number, because when the new companies came in, they may have had to compete a little for employees. The salaries, hopefully, or benefits are going to be better. But then you run into, who's the strong guy, and that's going to be the out-of-town guy. And that's going to be the chain, and that's going to be, how do you keep the Beaufort charm? How do you have a seafood restaurant when you're not selling local seafood off the dock? Kind of a thing. So you give, and that's why, again, if we can move into the sector of creating jobs and creating wealth, then people here would be able to afford to take
a better quality of life.
Better quality of life.
Exactly.
Yeah. You got 36 seconds.
Oh, gosh.
You got at me, Lolita.
Are you glad you're elected official? Do you like it? Are you happy?
I love public service. I grew up around it. It's a pain in the neck sometimes. I sometimes go out to dinner with friends and get interrupted with people still complaining about parking. But You know, I just believe it's important that the people's business is taken care of responsibly and honestly. And I think it's part of my fabric. And it's certainly a passion for me. So having worked on Capitol Hill for 16 years, having been in the state legislature, city council, mayor, I guess I have to like it.
Guess so, you're running again.
So I'm running again. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Lolita, for being with us. We'll see you next time on Straight Talk with Billy Kay. If you'd like to be in touch, you can go to my website, which is www.mayorbilly.com, or email me at billy@mayorbilly.com. billy@mayorbilly.com. Thanks for joining us.